Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome again to our live chat series from experts from the IMU School of Health Sciences. I'm Prof. Winnie. I will be moderating the session this afternoon because Prof. Chin will be our speaker. We've had 3 other speakers before this, and today I think we'll have a very interesting topic on the role of medical biotechnology during a pandemic. Can I have the next slide, please, BY? So before we begin, just some housekeeping rules that your mics will all be muted. And if you have any questions, please type your questions on the chat, and I'll be looking through the questions and and Prof. Chin will be answering the questions after her talk. So over to you, Prof. Chin. Prof. Chin, by the way, is the Associate Dean for Research and External Affairs at the School of Health Sciences in IMU, and we'll let her introduce you her own career path from here. Prof. Chin, over to you.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Just a little brief outline of what I'm going to talk about today. So the talk will be divided into 3 parts. The first will be, my career, why I chose to do what I am doing right now. And the second part will be the relevance of my medical biotechnology in my life and why I specifically chose medical biotechnology. And the third part will be why is medical biotechnology important in situations like in the pandemic. Okay, so let's talk about my little career in a nutshell. It's kind of long, so I'll try to keep it brief. As you can hear from my voice, I basically grew up in the United States. I was born in Malaysia, but I grew up in the United States, where I went to high school, Lawrence Academy in Groton, Massachusetts, where I got my high school diploma. Can everybody see my little arrow? Yeah? Okay. And after getting my high school diploma, I went to a 4-year college. It's a liberal arts college, where I got my Bachelor of Arts in Biological Sciences. It's not so much a Bachelor of Science, and the reason why is in the US, the colleges, we add an extra year where you learn about everything other than your own specific discipline of choice, okay? And after I received my Bachelor of Arts in Biological Sciences, I took my first job at the Children's Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts. As you can see from the first half of my career, I am a Massachusetts girl. I lived in the state of Massachusetts, primarily Boston, for a very long time. So at Children's Hospital, I basically learned a new skill on how to be an electron microscopist. I learned how to cut sections and use the electron beam to look at little tiny organelles. So after a year or 2 there, I got bored and I figured out, hey, why don't I get my PhD in something that I really, really like. At the time, it was microvascular research, where I like to study little capillaries and the interaction of certain cells in the capillaries. So I went to Boston University. I got a full scholarship there, where I also moonlighted as a teaching assistant. Because foreign students do not qualify for government aid. So in order to fulfill my scholarship requirements, I had to work part-time. So I was at Boston University for 9 months, where I also, once again, grew bored. I didn't really like microvascular research. So I decided to transfer. I transferred from Massachusetts to Maryland, which is in the mid-Atlantic, to Johns Hopkins University. I also received a scholarship there for a PhD in physiology. I know my degree is a master's, as you can see on the screen here, but a PhD, I started with a PhD. I thought I really wanted to do physiology, study the human body, how it works. But then once again, I got bored and I didn't think I would last long in the field of physiology. So I decided to think about things after my master's, and I got a job. Still working within the Johns Hopkins area. I worked for 3 years because I really couldn't decide what I want to do. So when I finally decided what I wanted to do, I went back to Hopkins and in the field of toxicology. So I found 2 advisors, one at Hopkins and one at Yale. And advisors are what you call supervisors in Malaysia, where I then got my PhD in toxicological sciences. and was very happy and got a first postdoctoral position. And in the US, after your PhD, we're required to do a postdoc, meaning that you do something other than your PhD where you actually get to apply what you've done in your PhD in a new setting. So I worked at the US Department of Energy at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. This time it was in Richland, Washington. It's not Washington, DC, it's Washington State, where Seattle is. So it's in the Pacific Northwest. So I was there in the Department of Molecular Toxicology. And after my 3-year contract was up, I then got my first real job at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston. So I came back to Boston full circle, where I also was a teaching faculty member at Harvard Medical School. And when I was there, I also moonlighted part-time in a biotech startup company called Alfama. Then about in 2012, I decided to come back to Malaysia, and I didn't know a lot of institutions in Malaysia, private institutions. So the first job I got was at Sunway University. It was a very interesting time there where I learned about not only the Malaysian academic system, but also how biological sciences are conducted in Malaysia. And Sunway at the time didn't have a medical school, and I was used to working in academic institutions where there was always a medical school. So then after a year and a half at Sunway, then I came to IMU in the Division of Medical Biotechnology as a professor and also an associate dean. So the question would be, if I have a PhD in toxicology, then why am I in the Division of Medical Biotechnology? What's the relationship between toxicology and medical biotechnology? That I will explain a little bit later. Okay. Was toxicology in my career my first choice as a career option? Obviously, the answer was no, because remember I did an earlier degree in physiology. So I personally, when I was growing up and in my early 20s and of course 30s, you know, I'm pretty old, I was more interested in human and veterinary medicine. So during my first few years at Hopkins, you know, I love studying how the body works and the mechanism of diseases. But then I found out that, you know, why don't I go enter medicine? But then again, economics and the growing interest of pollutants made me choose my career as a researcher. So as a researcher, I was driven by scientific curiosity, trying to figure out the interactions between pollutants in the air. Like in Malaysia, you would think of haze, you know, you have all these carbon particles in the air, and how those particles impact our lung as we breathe it in. So as a toxicologist, in my final years as a toxicologist, a toxicology PhD student, I was intrigued by a gaseous molecule in the body, namely called carbon monoxide. So you guys know carbon monoxide as a poisonous molecule. To me, it's a beneficial molecule. Why? Because our body makes it every time we break down a red blood cell. So I was intrigued by the fact that, you know, carbon monoxide is able to benefit our bodies because we make it. Our bodies don't make something just for no reason. So this is what I've been doing during my last 15 to 20 years here. So then we go back to the question, what is medical biotechnology and why does it fascinate me? You know, and the reason is very obvious. It has tremendous potential for growth and will always be needed. So before I talk about medical biotechnology, I have to define what medical biotechnology is. So simply, medical biotechnology is a medical science discipline that uses core principles of all these little disciplines, genomics, pharmacology, toxicology. I'm not going to read all of it because I think you can read it on your own. So I'm going to distill it into its two components, medicine or medical and biotechnology. So first, what is medicine? It's a scientific discipline that figures out how cells and organs in our body works and how we manage and treat diseases. So then what is biotechnology? Biotechnology is a science that uses biological processes of any living organism to help us live long and productive lives. So hence, when you put it together, medical biotechnology is a discipline of biotechnology that primarily studies DNA of living organisms, such as viruses and bacteria, and how we come up with ways to use them to treat and manage diseases. So some of you in the audience are wondering, what is medical biotechnology? Give me an example. So a historical example of medical biotechnology is very simple, diabetes. In the 1950s, people with diabetes injected themselves with insulin isolated from the pancreas of animals. This animal-derived insulin was purified and injected into diabetic patients. However, as all of us know, there can be many reasons why this is not going to work, because you're going to run out of animals to isolate the pancreas or insulin from. And a lot of people are either allergic to animals or have religious beliefs that are against, taking stuff from these animals. So that's when medical biotechnologists came in. With the first sequences of human insulin being deciphered, medical biotechnologists again engineered bacteria as protein factories to generate human insulin, otherwise known as human recombinant insulin. So people out there, you have family members with diabetes, or people with diabetes, they inject themselves with recombinant human insulin. And we in Malaysia are very, very fortunate to have a company that is in Johor right now that's actually making human recombinant insulin from yeast and not bacteria. Okay, so going back to medical biotechnology, by understanding the genetic code of how DNA is put together, medical biotechnologists are able to take advantage of this and manipulate DNA in pathogens such as bacteria and viruses. Once the DNA of these pathogens have been sequenced, only then can we figure out how to prevent both bacteria and viruses from infecting our cells. So then we come to the last part, the relevance of medical biotechnology in this COVID-19 pandemic. So we're going to talk about two different sections. One is the screening and testing, and the other is the management and prevention. So the screening and testing. When the rest of the world first found out about COVID-19, the China's biotechnologists had already begun sequencing it. So the actual virus that is responsible for COVID-19 is the SARS-CoV-2. So they managed to sequence it and share it with the rest of the world. So right now, people are being tested or screened with that particular sequence. So the testing requires the knowledge of the DNA of that particular SARS-CoV-2 virus. So right now, the testing and the screening is using this particular sequence that was discovered by these medical biotechnologists. Now, if we move to the right of your screen, the management and preventions. So right now, this is happening as well, but not fully being implemented. So what do I mean by that? So vaccine. So think about it, when all of us were growing up, especially when I was growing up in Malaysia, I was told that when I was born, I was vaccinated with BCG, with mumps, rubella, measles, tetanus, diphtheria, a lot of all these vaccinations when we were between day 1 to 24 months old. So we come back to COVID-19. So right now, after the sequence has been deciphered by these Chinese scientists, vaccines are being prepared. So what do I mean by that? So a lot of the virus is being isolated and grown in labs in huge quantities. And then what the scientists will do is they would inactivate or kill them, making the virus non-virulent, meaning non-infective. So this dead virus, it may be a portion of the virus or it may be the entire virus, is then injected into the body so that we can actually mount an immune reaction towards it, create antibodies, and have memory T cells that will then recognize it when we see it in the future. So this is what currently the scientists are doing. Now, the more interesting part of medical biotechnology today as we know it is the identification of what we call the spike protein. So if you look at the diagram below, and you see on the left is a photo by Fusion medical animation where they actually have a cartoon rendition of the SARS-CoV virus. So what I've drawn below here is the SARS-CoV virus basically attacking a human cell. So you see on the SARS-CoV virus, there are little T's on the outside. This is what we call the spike protein. So what scientists are doing right now is to figure out a way where they can then take the spike protein, they've sequenced it, so they've recognized the genetic code, And then they will grow a lot of these spike proteins, because this spike protein alone doesn't cause an infection, right? So these scientists will then grow the spike protein. They will inject the spike protein into animals, and to test the safety. And then it will treat it as if it's a normal vaccine. So the animals will then mount an immune response by generating proteins against the spike protein and not the entire virus protein itself, right? So if you look at it in a nutshell, medical biotechnology is in the forefront, but not really, because a lot of people don't understand what medical biotechnology is. And now I hope you have a little bit of appreciation of what goes on in the background, where medical biotechnologists actually came up with the sequence of the viral protein, viral DNA, and are now in the process of managing and preventing it by creating vaccines or treatment. Okay. That's the end of the talk. I'm ready for Q&A.
All right, thanks very much, Prof. Chin. I think that was really very interesting. You shared your illustrious career, I think, in working in and studying and working in one of the places in Boston where the top minds of the world gather. So I think that's really fascinating. And when I first met you, Prof. Chin, you said you're a carbon monoxide expert, and I'm going, oh my gosh. But it's really fascinating how you're looking into carbon monoxide as a treatment rather than as poison. And I also like the way you have actually explained biotechnology. What does the medical part mean? What does the biotechnology means in such a simple manner? So we are actually open for questions now, but maybe I can start off. You talked about testing, Prof. Chin. And I think people are very interested. There are a lot of countries claim they have enough tests, and some countries think they don't. And in Malaysia, we are quite confident that we've got the test. Maybe you could explain a little bit what's the difference between testing for antibodies versus testing for antigen, and also those rapid kits that we hear a lot from what we hear on the news.
Okay.
COVID, of course.
I'm not a testing expert, but what my understanding is, like I guess the last slide I explained before, is that the sequence of the viral DNA, this is the gold standard, whereby, if you have the sequence and you detect that sequence in your body, means that you actually have been infected, okay? That is using genomic testing or DNA testing. And you're looking at a completely different aspect where you're looking at the antibody. Now, we don't really know what sort of antibody that's being created from this, because it's still in its infancy right now. People are still deciding how to recognize it. But the thing that's important is if you have an increase in the number of specific antibodies, IgA, IgM, that means that you have a major infection, right? And antigens is another way of looking at it. Antigens means, you may be looking at things like the spike protein, which is an antigen. Can you look for things like that? Rapid testing, recognizing certain sequences, protein as well as DNA sequences.
Right. Okay. There's also another interesting, while waiting for okay, there's some questions coming in. Maybe you can share with us how knowing all this and how medical biotechnology benefits us in everyday life.
Okay, benefits as well. You heard of the insulin, what we talked about. And without recombinant or without insulin made in bacteria and yeast, I think a lot of diabetic patients will have a lot of issues. So that is one of the ways it benefits us. And then the other way is, crime scenes, where once again, we use the sequence of the specific individual, whether it is the DNA from your body or whether it is your blood cells. As the students out there know, that red blood cells don't have nuclei. So one of the ways that investigators will find out about looking for DNA is looking at mitochondrial DNA. So this is actually fascinating, and the most relevant parts that we see every day, not to say every day, but that you see it implemented is identification of human remains.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and especially if, for airplane crashes, for you know, murder suspects, and most importantly for paternity suits. Who's the father?
Right. So essentially, medical biotechnology is very useful for us to solve some of the, you know, life's problems using what we know about the human body and cells. There's a question here quite interesting from J. Kang Q, who's asking, what's the difference between biotechnology and molecular biology?
Okay. Well, molecular biology is a part of medical biotechnology. Medical biotechnology is a part of molecular biology. Now, the difference is, well, I can go back to this slide. Okay, if you can go back to this slide, medical biotechnology, under the umbrella of medical biotechnology, you have molecular biology. Molecular biology basically studies the DNA interaction, right? So it's also part of genomics, and it's also part of cell biology. So you see how they all integrate into one. You can't study one without the other, especially medical biotechnology. Will be nothing without molecular biology. But molecular biology can stand on its own, but medical biotechnology needs that kind of integration.
Okay. There's also a question here asking whether in Southeast Asia, right, unlike maybe more developed countries, do you think we do sufficient innovation to be in R&D in medical biotechnology, or is the career more about quality control roles?
That's a complicated question. But
well, yeah, did you get the question? So it's about whether, do you think that there's sufficient R&D done in this region for us to have a thriving career in medical biotechnology, or will the role of the medical biotechnologies more into quality control kind of roles?
Well, I think currently right now, based on, you see, before I answer the question, we at the Medical Biotechnology Division, we have partners in industry, and our partners in industry are really in tune with what's going on in the biotech industry in Malaysia right now. And they have told me that currently there are some companies working on sort of coming up with ways of detection. And so in many ways than one, I think it's the knowledge that is, the knowledge awareness is not currently in Malaysia yet. That's why us in medical biotechnology and IMU, one of our main jobs is to create awareness. And that's why we're having these series of live talks, is to talk about this and to be able to share these things. Because you have to think about it, it's a discipline that is emerging, it's growing. And like a lot of questions that I get on open day and also text messages from prospective students is, there are no careers. Why are we even studying medical biotechnology? And my long-winded answer to your question is, if we don't, we will never be prepared for the next level. So when we have a pandemic such as this, it's teaching us that, you know, us as scientists, as medical biotechnologists, have to move forward, have to really push it. So this is one of the ways to create awareness. So the next time that we have another pandemic or another situation, I hope we will never get to that stage, we will be more prepared because we've been through it once.
Yeah.
So in this case, this is sort of a preparation, a dress rehearsal of some sorts for what to expect in the future, because the viruses mutate at a crazy rate. Viruses such as HIV, and you wonder why there are no vaccines for HIV, is because every time it infects somebody, it mutates. So how can you create a vaccine for something that mutates constantly? So I think with COVID-19, it doesn't have that problem right now, as much as we know that's published in scientific articles and what you hear in the news. It doesn't mutate as fast as HIV. So in that way, it's easier to come up with a vaccination.
Yes, I think you're right that just because right now we might not be as what you're saying is that we may not be as advanced, but we got to get ready, and there are already startup companies and companies that
Yeah.
IMU has MOUs with, which are looking into aspects related to medical biotechnology. Now that you mentioned about vaccines, there's quite a few questions here about vaccines. There's one question asking that because vaccine takes such a long time, right, to be available, why is that so? Is it because the process of making it, or is it because there are problems with human testing? And what about deriving antibodies who have developed immunity? So basically, I think the question by Joseph is, why does it take so long to create a vaccine?
Okay. Once again, I'm not a virologist, but what I can share with you guys is, you see this slide here. It takes about, 12 months to 18 months to actually perfect the vaccine. Now think of it, every human body is different. Everybody has a different reaction towards certain medications and certain vaccinations. So the first part of the trials, clinical trials, is I'll just bring you through the process of any drug. It doesn't have to be a vaccine, if it's any drug, is to test whether it works in a test tube. And then you progress to a small animal model, meaning that if it works in a test tube, can it then work in a small animal model? And if it works in a small animal model, just make sure the small animal model has DNA compatibility to humans. Then it will go to clinical trials, the third clinical trial, your phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Now, and also in between these phases, you have to check for safety. So part of biotechnology and of course toxicology is to make sure that this particular drug or vaccine is not toxic and doesn't create a lot of side effects. So, and the thing is, it is at this stage that it's going to take a long time to figure out, yes, it works in this animal, and then you bring it to the humans and it doesn't work there. So a lot of medications, drugs actually fail in between small animal to human clinical trials. So, and also to make, if you look at the vaccine process that I have on the slide, we have to actually make sure that we grow enough of the virus, in this particular case, the virus, or we make enough of the drug in order to test it. Because each time you make the drug or you grow the virus, you have to make sure the virus has not mutated or the drug is not modified in any way, right? So is this is the kind of process that a lot of people don't understand unless you do research. And when you do research, research, nothing happens 100% correctly as you proposed. Because things will go wrong here, things will go wrong there.
Yeah, I think so. What you're saying is that it takes a long process, mainly because you have to ensure safety. There are protocols involved in translating something that you find works in animal all the way to the human body. I guess that's essentially why it takes a while. There's one question here that I think is going to be very much up your alley, and this is about, can you tell me a little bit more about toxicology? And let's say if it's carbon monoxide, how is that beneficial to the human body? So this is a question from Han. So he's very keen on understanding that, since you're an expert in this area. So carbon monoxide, Prof. Chin.
Okay, I never thought I'd get into it, but it's okay.
Keep it short. You've got a lot more questions coming.
It will be like 2-3 minutes, right? Okay. Every time a heme-related compound is broken down, and the best example I would use is hemoglobin. So every time a heme component is broken down, carbon monoxide is released. Right? Carbon monoxide gas is released. And when I first started as a toxicologist, I was wondering, what does carbon monoxide have to do what is the role of carbon monoxide in our bodies? Because we were always taught in primary school and secondary school and high school and every school that carbon monoxide is poisonous, right? And so, a group of people at Hopkins and us, we got together and actually I was recruited to do some of the testing in cellular models. We found that carbon monoxide, if we give carbon monoxide as a gas, it helped pure carbon monoxide gas, okay, at very low doses. It helped the cells overcome certain injuries. It helped small animals like mice and rats overcome injuries. So that's what I was thinking. What is it that is so important about carbon monoxide? Okay, so how does carbon monoxide work? Carbon monoxide works by binding to anything that has a hemoglobin, a heme-containing molecule, meaning red blood cells, meaning, you know, all the cytochrome oxidases in your mitochondria. Okay, I'm not going to get too technical, but we all learned that carbon monoxide binds to hemoglobin 120 times stronger, or 200 times stronger than oxygen. That is high toxic doses of carbon monoxide. But the level of, the amount of carbon monoxide that our body produces is very, very minuscule amounts, right? So my personal research, and I have a PhD student who's working on it right now, is that carbon monoxide as a gas is able to help ameliorate or prevent bacterial infections, okay? And my coworkers and I in Boston, we've actually shown that by inhaling low doses pure carbon monoxide, medical grade carbon monoxide, human beings are able to be more tolerant towards kidney transplantation. So what the student is asking, why is it important? It is important because instead of coming up with new antibiotics, we can use what our body produces and harness it in a way that we can then use it for our benefit.
Wow. Okay. So in line with that, you've got one other. This is a master's student. He's got a master's degree in medical biotechnology, and I don't know this he or she, but he or she's asking, is there any opportunity to work in your lab? And he's interested to understand more about COVID-19 and any opportunities to actually how if he wants to work more on this area, how should he go about it? He's currently got a master's degree in biotechnology, medical biotechnology.
Okay. What's his name? I was going to say
B. Sidra. So I can't tell whether it's a lady or a man, but he's basically asking if there's any opportunity to work with IMU in this area.
B. Sidra, can you please write in? Then we can have a
project maybe.
Yeah. You think about it. We can work something out, because this is really a very new area. I mean, carbon monoxide is new to Malaysia, therapeutic carbon monoxide, as well as COVID-19. And it will be interesting. It will be interesting. And I'm not saying I can guarantee you a job. I can say we can discuss it.
Yes.
And come
I think he's keen to see how he can further do more work in this area.
Yeah, sure.
We've also got a question from Dr. Hassan, who's asking, hi, Prof. Thank you very much for such an enlightening message in the field of biotechnology. He has a quick question for you. For the part of empowering biotechnology, it's very much cost effective, and we have fewer clinicians in the field. So just your opinion on what is the best way to figure out how to decrease the burden of GLOBE in the future.
Let me try to understand the question. So
yeah, I think he's trying to ask how do we use biotechnology for it to be cost effective, and we don't have enough people who are skilled in this. So how do you see how we can use biotechnology to overcome, figure out how to, I think, decrease the burden of disease?
Okay, I understand it as that, and I think I want to add something else to it as well. How do we have more trained medical biotechnologists, number one, to decrease the burden on the physicians, number two, right?
Yeah, that's right.
What it is. And so number one, how do we increase the visibility of medical biotechnology? Dr. Hassan, this is one of the ways. What we're doing right now is to have this kind of discussion where we actually talk about something that a lot of Malaysians are afraid to discuss. You know, what I hear from prospective students is in secondary schools and primary schools, when students talk about biotechnology or genomic testing or DNA, It's the general understanding is, oh, we don't know what it is. So what we don't know, we really don't want to discuss. So this is one of the ways to have this kind of platform, and we will continue to have this kind of platform where we will engage with everybody. And this is only in Malaysia, whereas if you look at the West, where in America, UK, where and Germany, where there is a lot of medical biotechnology being pushed around, and these companies are the ones, the companies in these countries are the ones that are coming up with all these vaccines and deciphering genetic codes and everything. But as you can see from this particular slide, the first people who did it was from China. Mm-hmm. They sequenced it first. So Asia is really getting up there, but we in Malaysia don't really realize it as much because it's not being put out there in the open. So this is, like I said, this is one of the ways, and we need all of you to go out and spread the word that medical biotechnology is important because it's doing all these fun things, right? So that's the answer to the first question. The second question is, how do we, lessen the burden, especially with the doctors? Because honestly speaking, all this fundamental groundwork is done by medical biotechnologists. And in the field of medical biotechnology, you also have different disciplines where you can go into designing medical equipment that will then help, like what Prof. Winnie was saying, the rapid testing, all this, integrative stuff. Like right now, I'm not saying that go out and buy it. They are actually medical tattoos that you can put on your body, and they will then examine different things in your body fluid and send that information back to your doctor. So this is one of the ways that medical biotechnology has moved forward that very few people here know. I'll give you an example. The RFID chips in the toll booth, right? So I don't have an RFID chip in my car, so I can't tell you. But in countries like the US and the UK and Germany, they actually have RFID chips implanted just underneath your skin. And this RFID chip can include your entire genetic profile or your medical history. And in some cases, this is not medical biotechnology, but biotechnology in general, where they implant the RFID chip, and that RFID chip has a code to open your door. So it's just one of those things, you have biotechnology that will actually push us forward, but at the same time, we are afraid to even understand what biotechnology is. So to answer your question, we have to move forward as a population by understanding that we have to embrace it. Medical biotechnology has to be embraced. Look at Singapore. Singapore has a biotech arm that's A-star, that is everything else. And why is that? Because they actually have created enough awareness. So for us as an academic institution, our job here is to also create awareness and share what medical biotechnology is, number one, and number two, what it can do for society.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think from your explanation, it's really interesting that it can actually do a lot in trying to reduce the burden and to help doctors, as you have explained, in specific situation to overcome the burden of disease. There's also a question from Jasmine Lee here. I think she wants to know what's the difference between medical biotechnology and biomedical engineering.
Okay. Biomedical engineering is actually a completely separate entity, but also under the same umbrella as medical biotechnology. So the different part is very simple. Is the only difference is it's a huge engineering component where you have a lot of physics, right? You have a lot of physics. You have very, very little to do with the actual human body itself, but a lot more to do with how we can come up with medical devices to actually help what the detection process is. So biomedical engineering is right, Winnie? Biomedical.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's more into the physics and the equipment is.
Yeah.
Is
Yep,
that
and
what
the computers, the algorithms coming up. See, I'm not an engineer, so I can't really answer that question really
yeah, so,
accurately.
yeah,
But what I can tell you is it has a lot of engineering components where they come up with devices.
yeah, that's right. So that's more biomedical engineering
Yeah.
versus what you've just explained for medical biotechnology. Coming back to the next question, back to carbon monoxide. Joseph Matthew wants to know, do you think carbon monoxide can be used in areas like dentistry or surgery, for example, to reduce the rate of bacterial infection?
Of course, when you ask me that question, I have to say yes, for obvious reasons, because that's my research. Now, for those of you who are not aware of carbon monoxide research, there are actually two main ways to administer carbon monoxide. The low dose medical grade carbon monoxide. The first is, as a gas. If you come to my lab, you will see we have the purified medical grade carbon monoxide. But there is also a different way. Well, let's go back to the gaseous one first. When you inhale something as a gas, it goes everywhere, right? So that's the beauty of carbon monoxide. It doesn't need a receptor to take it in, and you don't have to inject it, you just inhale it. But the not so good side is when you inhale it, if you have something in the liver, let's say your liver has an issue, by inhaling it, it will go everywhere as well as the liver. So in actuality, you have to inhale a lot of carbon monoxide to actually be therapeutical. So one of the ways, that's why I was in the startup company to test the carbon monoxide releasing molecules, or we call them CORMs. So we take well, not me, the chemists, they come up with metallo compounds where they attach carbon monoxide gas to that particular molecule. And it's in the form of a powder. And what we do is we inject the powder or the diluted powder in a solution specifically into the target organ. So, so those are the two ways that we have actually administered carbon monoxide. And I think that if it happens in the rest of your body, I'm sure it'll happen in the mouth, where you can actually prevent bacterial infections. I don't know whether you want to inhale it in your mouth or whether you want to inject it directly into your gums. I don't know. It depends on what the use is, but I would not limit the use in any ways.
In other fields of medicine, so that yeah, probably need more research into that, but the possibilities are there. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, because it's in clinical trials right now in the US.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Wow. All right. So while we wait for more questions to come in, BY, can I just get your opinion on this? So there is a theory, and people are testing it in the United Kingdom, that one of the reasons why COVID is not so virulent or not so severe in young people, and that could be actually related to the fact that they've been vaccinated with the MMR. So do you think, what do you think of that view? Because I think that there's a group in the UK that's just looking into that the possibility, why is it that it's more severe in older people, not in younger people? And could that be related to the fact that the rubella, apparently the rubella virus is very similar to COVID?
Well, the MMR, for those of you who don't know what it is mumps, measles, and rubella. Okay, I'll give you an example of what's currently happening. The Gilead, the company that makes pharmaceutical company or biotech company that makes this particular drug is Gilead, and the drug that they're using right now, remdesivir, was originally targeted for SARS, I think, and they found that it actually is able to alleviate symptoms, some of the major symptoms in COVID-19. So to answer your question, coronaviruses as a family have similarities. So some of the antiviral drugs right now, I mean, they're going through it, they're testing it, I'm sure, in small animal models right now. Some of the antiviral medications currently for other viruses and coronaviruses will work, but not completely. It will work for up to a certain stage. For example, the malaria drug, hydroquinone, I don't even remember what it's called. That was touted as, you know, one of the ways to manage the COVID-19. And what basically that does is, not malaria, it's the lupus, I think it's lupus drug. What it does is it actually it's an anti-inflammatory medication. So what that particular drug did was it actually suppressed a lot of the inflammation caused by COVID-19. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of drugs out there in the market right now that antiviral medications that will work, but it's not 100%.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we've got one more question from Pavitra here, who wants to know what's the job prospects as medical biotechnologists in Malaysia and also in overseas.
Always get that question.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there actually are a lot of jobs, and I know some of you are laughing right now, but it's true. If you go into, for example, if you go into websites or search engines like JobStreet or Monster, and you look for research jobs, and you'll get thousands, right? Research jobs. And if you, for example, after this talk, you just go and just have a quick check. You check the qualifications. Part of the criteria, they will say an undergraduate degree in biotechnology, even though it's not a biotechnological job opening. And the reason why they ask for that is because the training that you get as a medical biotechnologist or as a regular biotechnologist is it's so fundamental, it's so stringent, and you go through what we train you. Let's say if you come to IMU to do your medical biotechnology degree, we train you, we give you all this training, and we test you with these applied skills so that you are ready to go out to work. And the companies, the research companies in Malaysia, they have seen it, they like it. I get phone calls asking me, do you have any graduates? And I have to say, not enough graduates. They're like, why? And I'm like, I don't know. I just have to reach out to more people. And that's my audience. I hope you will reach out to other people. And I hope you will then come to us and talk to us about this. So there are a lot. It's just, you just have to look for it. And if you have issues, you can email me anytime. But let me go to the actual job prospects. We actually have 4 main categories. We have quality and regulatory affairs, like you talked about before. You know, you can work in patents, you can work in quality assurance. We also have research and development jobs. And all these jobs I'm listing out, we actually have graduates in there, alumni. For research and development, you can work as a medical technologist, a lab technician, a diagnostic technician, research officers, okay? Then you have the entrepreneurship, where we actually have students who are actually managing directors of their own companies or directors, right? They come up with biotechnological consumers, okay? And then you have the business development, you know, project manager, your claim adjuster, you know, material planner, business development executive. So there are a lot of jobs. It's just that, you know, you just have to know where to look. And like I said, if you have problems looking for it, just come to us. We'll be more than happy to help you.
Yeah, right, thanks. So what you're saying is that the good news is there are jobs. It's just that maybe if you look for medical biotechnologies right up there, you may not see it, but it's in some of the roles that many of our alumni are actually in it already.
Yeah.
Do you think that they need to do like a master's degree or a postgraduate degree? Would that be beneficial, more beneficial, or just graduating with an undergraduate degree would be adequate for you to look for some of these jobs?
Okay. If you remember my slide, my history slide, I'll just show you a little bit. Maybe I can help with this. Okay. If you look at my journey, I've stopped at each juncture to work, right? And I was a very unsure person of what I wanted to do. So my suggestion is, if you want to do if you want to get an undergraduate degree, you can work a year or so to figure out if this is what you want to do, right? And it's you know, you're young, you have a lot of time, so it's good that you use your undergraduate degree and apply what you've learned from theory to actual application and real world. That will tell you whether you actually like this kind of discipline. And so I would personally, I would advise that. Why? Because I went through it. and you not only earn a little bit of money, you get your name out there. You know, you learn a new skill, because what you learn out in your first job after your undergraduate degree is not necessarily what you learn in theory in your undergraduate school, meaning that you're actually applying what you learn. You know, in your first job as an alumni with an undergraduate degree, your first job will not ask you questions or test you. Your first job is, they're gonna say, do it, and can you do it? If you can't do it, that means you know the theory, but you don't know how to apply it. So at IMU, this is what we teach you. We teach you how to apply that knowledge. So we're preparing you for your first job. And I'm not saying that you have to do that, because we have a lot of students who actually have gone on to do their master's straight away, either locally in Malaysia or in the UK or in Australia and even Germany. So my answer to your question is, the world is your oyster. It's up to you to decide what you want to do.
Yeah, I see. So that's indeed a very wise advice, that perhaps it's good for you to go out there, find what areas you are most interested in, then you'll be more sure, if you wish to do a postgraduate degree, exactly where your interest lies. So it's not necessarily that right after an undergraduate, you have to do a postgraduate for the field of medical biotechnology. So that's essentially what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it looks like we are almost time already, BY. And you've given some fantastic, oh, one more question. Okay, Jay Kang has one more question. Gene therapy. It says here, he's asking, gene therapy is a potential treatment option for a number of diseases. How close is biotechnology in terms of gene therapy to infectious diseases?
Okay. Gene therapy for infectious disease. This is a complicated one. So I will answer it by using known applications of gene therapy in other diseases. So for instance, for retinitis pigmentosa, the drug Luxturna. So they currently, right now, they've actually isolated that particular section of the gene responsible, DNA responsible, and they've done gene therapy using Luxturna. And a lot of the blind people can now actually see. So that is a straightforward case, like blindness. But with regards to infection, so you have, let's say, for instance, bacterial infection. So the bacteria infects you, right? But it infects every cell in your body. So there is no specific molecule or organelle that the bacteria specifically targets. So it's very difficult to come up with gene therapy for things like bacterial infections or viral infections, because there's not a specific known target. If you have a specific known target, let's say like retinitis pigmentosa, it's a little bit easier. So for gene therapy to work in infections, it's not the correct modality. The correct modality would be the vaccination, the spike protein thing that I was talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds, yeah, thanks. I think that's very clear. And I like the way, again, the way you explain things. You make it simple, and even someone like me who is not in biotechnology can understand. And you've got a lot of messages, actually, people thanking you for your answers and saying that you're very spot on. And they're very clear with our communication and the way you've answered their questions and demonstrating, I mean, the expertise that you have, BY. So I think it's been a very productive afternoon indeed. We are only about a couple more seconds to closing the session. BY, I understand you've got one last thing to say before we end the session, so over to you.
Okay. First and foremost, I'd like to thank, since this is the last talk in a series of 4, I'd like to thank, my dean, Winnie, for allowing me to do all this stuff, and for co-hosting me, because she knows it's not easy to co-host me because I like to talk forever. But like to also thank the IT team, and the admissions and the marketing team for helping put all this together. So I'd like to end by telling people in the audience that, health sciences really play a very, very important role in the front lines, as well as behind the scenes in situations like in a pandemic setting. So what do I mean? So if you look at this little cartoon diagram that we have here, so the pandemic is in the middle right here. And what you have seen in the open everywhere in the world is the role of the healthcare workers, the medical doctors, the emergency medical technicians, and the nurses. But in actuality, there are a lot more that goes on behind the scenes, and it's also up front. Like today, what we talked about medical biotechnology, the sequence of the viral DNA is so important. So without the sequence, essentially, a lot of these things will not happen, right? So once we have the sequence, like what Winnie was saying, the testing, the biomedical scientists are the ones who will then go out and test, whether it's a rapid kit or whether it's the DNA or PCR testing. And then what Prof. Winnie had her discussion last week to talk about the dietetics, the nutritional requirements of people, not only of the patients, but people like us in a lockdown. We sit down and all we do is bring a bag of potato chips and start stuffing it in our mouths. Why? Because we have nothing else to do. So her talk last week was the importance of not only managing our diets, we eat only what we should eat. The diet also helps us with our mental capacity, is keeping us psychological up, right? So that was Prof. Winnie. Oh, by the way, for biomedical sciences, Tony Rhodes was the one who spoke about it 2 weeks ago. And then before that, we had Dr. Lim Beek Yoke talk about nursing. The nursing care, the management is so important because the nurses are the direct liaisons between the patient themselves and the family. Because a lot of patients in ICUs, those who are actually warded, will not get a chance to speak to the nurse, their family. So the nurses, I'm sure you've seen some of the videos being played on the internet, nurses actually using their cell phones to help communicate, help the communications between the patients as well as the family, and in some cases, in times of dire situations, such as when they are not expected to live. So in a nutshell, the entire health sciences play a very, very important role. And I hope all of you see that, and I hope all of you continue to think about all these programs such as biomedical sciences, dietetics with nutrition, medical biotechnology, or nursing as viable options for your careers, because you see the important roles being played in situations such as the pandemic that is not really out there. So our aim, our purpose is to share this with all of you. And we are hoping that in the next few months, we will hopefully have another session of live talks. Right, Winnie?
Yeah, that's right. I think you've summed that up very nicely, BY. I think a lot of people, when they think about frontliners, they don't think about those behind the scene as well, which are the allied health that you have highlighted just now, that play all together, work together in taking care of the patient and also managing a situation like the pandemic. So yeah, absolutely spot on, BY. Yes,
Okay.
so I think it looks like we're going to end the session now. Thank you very much for everyone who has been with us from day one up till now. We will keep in touch with you, and some of the questions that we've not answered, we will definitely answer that and post it back on this platform, right, BY?
Yep.
So that you can follow up with it. So have a great afternoon and evening ahead, and stay safe and stay healthy, everyone. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Bye.